Okay, so get this for today's deep dive.
Uh-huh.
You sent in a movie transcript.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so color me intrigued.
Okay.
We are going to plunge into the world of Indonesian horror.
Oof.
I know, right?
I love it.
A 2024 film called MUNKAR.
Okay.
And, you know,
Yeah.
how much I love a good spooky story.
I do.
Yeah.
This one is definitely unique.
Oh.
Yeah. And munkar, by the way,
Good.
is a term that's loaded with meaning in Islam.
Okay.
Often associated with angels who question the deceased in the grave.
Oh, wow.
So right off the bat, the
Yep.
title itself hints at the film's exploration of faith, death, and judgment.
Okay, that's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Wow, and it's all set against the backdrop of an Islamic boarding school
Right.
for girls in Indonesia.
Mm-hmm.
So for our listeners who might not be familiar with Indonesian horror,
Yeah.
can you set the scene a bit?
Sure.
Like, what kind of vibe are we talking about here?
So imagine this.
Yeah.
A strict, religiously focused environment where every action is scrutinized. Uh-huh.
And the fear of divine punishment hangs in the air.
Oh, wow.
Indonesian horror often blends these spiritual anxieties with graphic visuals and unsettling soundscapes.
Yeah.
It's not just about jump scares.
Right.
It's about tapping into deep-seated fears of the unseen.
You got it. So we're not dealing with your typical slasher flick here.
Right.
This is horror with a cultural and spiritual edge.
Exactly.
And then there's this whole concept of jinn.
Yes,
I'm guessing that plays a big role.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Jinn are supernatural beings in Islamic tradition.
Okay.
Kind of like spirits, but with free will.
Okay.
They can be good, bad, or somewhere in between.
Uh-huh.
Think of them like the unpredictable wild card
Right.
in this already tense environment.
Okay, so we've got a strict Islamic boarding school,
Yes.
the looming presence of jinn,
Mm-hmm.
and a title that evokes judgment and the afterlife.
Right.
I am already getting chills.
Yeah.
But before we dive into the plot,
I have to ask, what is the significance of using an Islamic boarding school as the setting?
okay,
It seems like the film is doing something more than just providing a creepy backdrop.
you're right on the money.
Okay.
By placing the horror within a space that's supposed to be sacred and safe,
Mm-hmm.
the film immediately raises questions about hypocrisy, power dynamics, and the potential for darkness to lurk beneath a veneer of piety.
Ooh, I see where this is going.
Yeah.
So it's not just about scaring the audience.
Right.
It's about using horror to critique the institutions and systems that we often trust blindly.
Precisely.
Right.
Now let's meet Herlina,
Okay.
a new student at the Arahimu boarding school,
Uh-huh.
who's immediately ostracized and bullied.
Okay.
And remember that point about the school's strictness?
Yes.
Well, that rigid structure creates a breeding ground for cruelty and abuse.
And this bullying,
Yeah.
it's not just typical teenage drama, right?
No, it's
The
not.
transcript mentions a burn on Herlina's hand.
Right.
And things escalate pretty quickly from there.
Yes, and that burn becomes a physical manifestation of the deeper trauma Herlina endures.
Right.
It's symbolic of the pain inflicted by those in power,
Okay.
both physically and emotionally.
So from the very beginning,
Yeah.
the film is weaving together these themes of social hierarchy,
Right.
abuse of power,
Mm-hmm.
and the vulnerability of those who don't fit in.
Yeah.
And this is all before the jinn even make a real appearance.
Right. But remember those Quranic verses you mentioned earlier?
Yes.
Ones that kept popping up throughout the transcript?
Uh-huh.
They're not just there for religious flavor.
Okay.
They hint at the jinn's role as a force of divine retribution,
Okay.
punishing those who have strayed from the path of righteousness.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Are you saying the jinn are like divine enforcers?
It's a fascinating interpretation, isn't it?
Yeah.
The film doesn't explicitly say it,
Okay.
but the way those verses are woven into the narrative,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost as if the jinn are responding to the hypocrisy and injustice festering within the school.
Wow.
It's like the school itself has summoned this darkness through its own actions.
Okay, so we've got layers upon layers here. Bullying power dynamics,
Uh-huh.
the presence of the jinn,
Right.
and now this idea of divine justice playing out in a horror setting.
Exactly.
My mind is officially blown.
Good.
Yeah.
And here's where Munkar takes a truly dark turn.
Okay.
Remember, the school is supposed to be a haven of faith, but underneath that facade,
Right.
there's this simmering tension.
Yeah.
The teachers are constantly warning the girls about straying from the righteous path, but
Mhm.
their words seem to carry more judgment than compassion.
Yeah, it's giving very much like rules for thee, but not for me vibes.
Exactly.
And that's before the supernatural stuff even kicks in.
Right.
I'm guessing Herlina's death is what really unleashes the chaos.
Exactly. Her death
Okay.
initially attributed to a car accident, becomes the catalyst for a series of
Yeah.
increasingly terrifying events. Students start exhibiting signs of possession,
Like what?
speaking in tongues, contorting their bodies, even harming themselves.
Oh my gosh.
And remember how Indonesian horror thrives on unsettling soundscapes?
Yes.
The transcript describes these scenes with such vivid detail, it's almost like you can hear the tormented cries and the whispers of unseen entities.
Oh, that's creepy.
It's like the film is using these graphic scenes
Yes.
to shock us out of our complacency,
Okay.
forcing us to confront the darkness that's been lurking beneath the surface all along.
But what about Herlina?
Right.
Is she just a victim in all of this?
Yeah.
Or is there something more to her role in the story?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Oh.
As the horror escalates, it becomes clear that Herlina is somehow connected to the jinn even after her death.
Hmm.
But it's not a simple possession story.
Okay.
Remember that phone call in the transcript where Herlina's mother is desperately seeking an alternative treatment for her daughter's burn? Well, it turns out that's when she unknowingly performed a ritual summoning the jinn to heal Herlina.
Whoa. So it was an act of love that inadvertently unleashed this evil.
Yeah.
That adds a whole new layer of tragedy to the story.
And it raises questions about the unintended consequences of our actions.
Oh, wow.
Especially when we're driven by desperation or fear.
Yeah.
Herlina's mother was trying to protect her daughter, but her actions had a ripple effect, unleashing a force that she couldn't control.
It's like the film is saying that even the best intentions can have devastating outcomes.
Yeah.
But if the jinn was summoned to heal Herlina, why is it now tormenting the school?
That's the key question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's in the film's climax where the answer is revealed.
Okay.
Remember those specific Quranic verses we talked about earlier?
Yes.
Well, in the climax, a powerful jinn appears and reveals that it was summoned not just to heal, but to punish.
Punish, but for what?
The jinn reveals that the school is rife with hypocrisy. Those in power, the teachers and administrators, are preaching piety and righteousness while engaging in behavior that directly contradicts those teachings.
So the film is using the jinn as a tool to expose the corruption within the school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's as if the jinn, a being from the spiritual realm,
Yeah.
is able to see through the facade of piety and reveal the darkness that humans try so hard to conceal.
Yeah.
And the punishment isn't random acts of violence. It's targeted, aimed at those who have abused their power and betrayed the trust placed in them.
This is blowing my mind. So it's not just a horror film, it's a social commentary disguised as a supernatural thriller.
Right. And notice how the film uses those Quranic verses to add another layer of meaning.
Oh,
The verses that emphasize forgiveness and reconciliation.
right.
Well, they seem to highlight the lack of those qualities within the school.
Okay.
It's a stark contrast that reinforces the jinn's role as an agent of divine justice.
Okay, so we've got this incredible blend of horror, Islamic beliefs, and social commentary. But what about the teachers? How do they react to this supernatural reckoning?
That's another fascinating aspect of Munkar.
Okay.
The film doesn't paint the teachers with a single brush.
Right.
Some cling to the rigid structure of the school, blaming the students for inviting the jinn through their supposed transgressions.
Okay.
Others, however, start to question their own beliefs and the system they've upheld for so long.
It's like the jinn's arrival has forced them to confront their own complicity and the potential for evil to exist even within a place of supposed holiness. But what about Herlina's mother?
Right.
How does she fit into all of this?
Remember, she was the one who unknowingly unleashed this force of retribution.
Right.
Her story becomes a tragic reminder that even those who act out of love can become instruments of destruction.
Wow.
And it forces us to ask who is truly responsible for the chaos that unfolds.
Yeah.
Is it Herlina's mother driven by desperation? Or is it the school itself with its culture of hypocrisy and abuse?
Those are some heavy questions.
But it's what makes Munkar so much more than a typical horror film.
Right.
It's using the genre to explore complex themes of faith, justice, and the consequences of our actions.
And it leaves us wrestling with those themes long after the credits roll.
Right. Speaking of which,
Yeah.
I think it's time we moved on to our outro and offer our listeners some final thoughts to ponder.
Okay, so after this wild ride through Munkar,
Yeah.
where do we even begin to unpack all of this for our listener?
Well, I think the first takeaway is that Munkar shows just how powerful and thought-provoking horror can be
Right.
when it's intertwined with these cultural and religious elements.
Yeah.
It's not just about cheap scares, it's about using those scares to delve into these complex issues of faith, hypocrisy, and the consequences of our actions.
And what I find so fascinating is that Munkar doesn't shy away from critiquing those in power, even within a religious institution.
Absolutely.
It challenges that idea that outward piety automatically equals inner goodness.
Right.
You know, it makes me think about how horror,
Yeah.
in general, often reflects the anxieties of the time it was created.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think Munkar says about Indonesian society and the things people might be grappling with?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Munkar could be seen as a reflection of concerns about the abuse of power within institutions,
Okay.
the struggle to reconcile traditional beliefs with modern society, and perhaps even a fear of unchecked spiritual forces.
Right. It's like the film is holding up a mirror to these societal anxieties and saying, look, this is what happens when we ignore these issues. This is what festers in the darkness.
Exactly. And it uses the jinn
Right.
as this embodiment of those anxieties, as force that comes in to expose the rot from within.
But here's the question that keeps nagging at me.
Okay.
Does Munkar ultimately offer a message of hope or despair?
That's the brilliance of the film.
Yeah.
It leaves that question open to interpretation.
Okay.
We see the school grappling with the aftermath of the jinn's wrath. Lives lost, faith shattered, and the future uncertain. But within that uncertainty, there's a glimmer of potential for change.
You mean like a chance for the survivors to rebuild?
Right.
To create a system that's truly rooted in justice and compassion?
Exactly. It's up to the characters.
Okay.
And by extension, the viewers to decide whether this experience will lead to genuine transformation or simply a return to the same patterns of abuse and hypocrisy.
So for our listener who dove into this world of Indonesian horror with us, I think Munkar offers a powerful challenge to confront the darkness within ourselves and our institutions.
Yes.
And to strive for a world where those in power are held accountable for their actions.
And to remember that sometimes the scariest monsters aren't the supernatural ones, but the ones we create ourselves through our choices and our silence.
Well said. And on that chilling note, we'll leave you to ponder the unsettling brilliance of Munkar.
Thank you for watching. But be careful. Sometimes the scariest stories have a way of finding us when we least expect it. If you enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up. And if you dare, subscribe for more tales that'll keep you up at night. Sweet dreams, if you can have them.